that. Well, that's my signal to begin. Hi, my name's John Kaye. I'm a Greens member of the New South Wales Parliament. And before I begin, I acknowledge that we're meeting on the land of not the Gadigal, Bitchigal, the land of the Bitchigal. Acknowledge that this is their land, always has been, always will be, is never ceded. Can I thank you for giving up the one piece of solar radiation you might have seen for about 3 weeks in Sydney, and being so it's very kind of you to do that. I really appreciate that. I'll try not to keep you here too long. I'll try and keep you engaged while you're here. And of course, this is the climate deniers' dream, the weather we've been having recently. They all carry on about how bad renewable energy is. I was talking to a friend yesterday afternoon who's in Campbelltown, and he reckons he's got 5 kilowatts of solar panels. A lot of solar panels. He's pretty enthusiastic. He's got 5 kilowatts of solar panels. He reckons at midday yesterday, with rain and clouds, he was generating about 2.5 kilowatts. So it does, even with the miserable weather, we still had some. I want to start by asking you a question and explain what I'm going to do. I'm going to ask you a question. Who do you think said the following? We are, and then open quotes, we are committed to a secure and affordable renewable energy future for New South Wales. Who do you think made that statement? We are, open quotes, committed to... Not quite, close. No, that statement was made by the New South Wales government. The opening line says the New South Wales government is committed to a secure and affordable renewable energy future for New South Wales. That was their submission so it's not that far off John Howe, it's their submission to the Renewable Energy Target Review being commissioned by the Abbott government. When I read it, when it came out, I thought, oh, look, this is a mistake. That's my submission, not their submission. This is the same government, I should say, that has the world's toughest noise regulations against wind farms, such that wind farms are regulated on a noise level that no other industry is regulated on. In fact, if you had a refrigerator outside your house and inside your house, it would make more noise inside your house. There would be more noise coming into your house than would be allowed to from a wind turbine. This is a government that, probably uniquely in the world, has taken a not well-designed solar bonus scheme and converted it into a situation where a lot of people around New South Wales, when they put energy back into the grid, get 0 cents for that renewable energy. This is a government that refuses to move against the planning approvals granted by the previous government for 2 large coal or gas-fired power stations. This is a government that has comprehensively failed to provide sensible regulation around stopping the spread of coal seam gas, on the lie that we absolutely have to have an in-state source of gas or we're going to have a collapsing state. This is a government that has run, for the 3 years it's been in office, a consistent war against the 2 most viable forms of renewable energy, the wind and rooftop solar. Yet this is a government whose Environment Minister talks about New South Wales becoming the California of the Pacific. Same time, it's a government that has a treasurer that says that you can't have a wind turbine on Kooragang Island. Kooragang Island is the island where about half of the big coal loaders in Newcastle are, because the wind turbine will blow the coal dust around. Now, I'm an engineer. I don't know much about literature, but I call that a mixed message, wouldn't you? There's good and there's bad in what I've just told you. There's some tremendously good things. We have a Minister for Energy, not a Minister for Energy, we have a Minister for the Environment who, for the first time in my time in politics in New South Wales since 2007, a Minister for the Environment who actually understands the role that renewable energy can take and the role that governments could be playing in the transition to renewable energy. His senior minister, the Minister for Planning, Crew Goward, stood in Canberra and said if the ACT is so keen on wind turbines, why don't they have them here? Why are they putting them in New South Wales? 2 weeks earlier, Rob Stokes, the Minister, who wasn't then the Minister for the Environment, 2 weeks he was then at the Parliamentary Secretary for Renewable Energy, stood outside one of those wind turbines that was being built to provide Canberra's ambitious target of 80% renewable energy. Sorry, 90% renewable energy by 2030, I think it is. Who stood beside one of these turbines being built in New South Wales and said, hey, this is great for New South Wales, look at all the jobs we're generating. So they're in a mess. And, you know, we've always had a soft spot for the Liberals, not. And this is our opportunity to help them out. Let me put that another way. We are at a cusp in the battle to slash the 60 million tonnes of carbon dioxide that comes up from our coal-fired generators. We're in a cusp in the campaign to take Australia and New South Wales away from being the world's largest per capita greenhouse gas emitters and take us into a different future. We're at a cusp of generating lots of new jobs or sticking with the old industries that are going to lose jobs. Just on Friday, the boss of the company that is about to buy Macquarie Generation, his name is King, but I can't remember his first name. He's the CEO of AGL, which is a company that's about to buy Macquarie Generation, and he announced that he thought that in the next 2 years, next 3 years, by 2017, he thought New South Wales' last aluminium smelter might close down and take with it 1,500 jobs. I saw that figure of 1,500 because we'll come back to that later on. But what was interesting about that was, for me, it said the old industries are in trouble. The old industries, the old energy-intensive, capital-intensive industries are not making it in Australia. We simply can't compete in the commodity markets around aluminium and around coal. We're losing jobs massively. And what I think the big theme for the Greens has to be is not just about saving the planet, but building an economy for New South Wales that creates jobs for the 21st century. And an economy that creates jobs based on the greatest natural resource this country has. And it's not our coal or our coal seam gas, it's not our wood chips, it's not even our agricultural production. That's a good thing. It's not even our sunshine and our wind and our waves. They're good too. It's our people. And the theme of this is that we need to move away from multinational capital and we need to be backing our people. And doing that means moving to a renewable energy future. So what I want to do this afternoon, so that's the preamble, what I want to do this afternoon is just give you a bit of, and we're not in DAPTO, I know we're not in DAPTO, and I know it's not June, I'm sorry. I did actually write new slides for today, I did actually update the slides, and they're sitting on my computer at home, so if anyone wants to go and get my computer, so just pretend, DAPTO's a nice place, by the way, it's got a dog track and all sorts of things, so we could be in DAPTO. What I want to do is begin by posing the question to you, if what we say about renewable energy is so good, why aren't we there yet? So, when you're driving with kids and you're going on a holiday destination, say, why aren't we there yet? So my first thing I will answer is why aren't we there yet? Then I want to talk about where we want to go and why we want to go there. Where we want to go is pretty clearly, as the slide says, 100% renewable New South Wales, shutting down all our coal-fired power stations, our gas-fired power stations, and replacing them with renewable energy. And then I want to talk a little bit about the campaign and how we get there. So that's really what I want to go through this afternoon. Now, you have to forgive me, I'm not sure whether I can change slides one at a time. This thing often... Oh, there we go. No, we're almost there, but not quite. There we go. So we really want to move... we've been spending, I and the Greens and various other people have been spending the best part of the last 3 years, more than that in my case, since 2004, so best part of the last 10 years, talking about a vision for a clean energy future. Now that vision has grown as the technology has grown. When I first started in 2004, I talked about never building another coal-fired power station in New South Wales and beginning to replace them with renewable energy. I don't have to do that now. We now know, and I'll explain that in a minute, we can actually get rid of all of our coal-fired and gas-fired power stations. But we've talked about that a lot we now need to move, particularly in the next 6 months, 7 months and 1 week. 7 months and 1 week time will be an election in New South Wales. An election which originally was going to be very boring because it was a lay-down misère for the Liberals and the Nationals, for the Baird-Stoner government, but probably now going to be more interesting. There are going to be a lot more politicians, and we're standing right here in what will be a marginal seat, or a seat that's very likely to change hands. I'd like to say that it's changing hands to the Greens, but I don't think. Well, that's yet to be seen. But at the moment, that's slightly longer shot. The key thing that people always say when I say this, when I start talking, say, yeah, that's all very well and good, and yes, you can talk about the economics, that's great, but the overwhelming problem you've got is that we're a nation of climate deniers. And you'd think that was true, except that it isn't. We are not a nation of climate deniers. This is a survey that was done by Griffith University, and with collaboration with the UK University. I think it was 5,000 surveys survey items across New South Wales, across Australia. And they asked, one of the questions they asked, do you think that human-induced global warming is not true, a problem, a serious problem, a very serious problem, or don't care? And it turns out that only 5.8% of Australians are climate deniers. Only 5.8% of Australians, when asked privately, do you think that humans are having an impact on the climate, only 5.8% will say no.
My question is, there's never been a time in its history when the climate hasn't been changed. It's always been changed.
No, this is about human-induced. So this
I've looked and listened to all these speakers. I've never seen any evidence to say, okay, we get this natural change in this.
Can I stop you right there? Can I stop you right there? Can I stop you right there? I had really bad chest infection 3 weeks ago, and I went to the doctor, and the doctor gave me antibiotics. And I didn't ask the doctor, how do you know these antibiotics are going to cure this? I didn't ask him, show me the science. I knew he was an expert. And I listened to the expert. I knew that he had a body of expert knowledge, lots of scientific data, and this was the best treatment for me. I'm not going to debate climate science today at all. I'm not going to do it because I'm not an expert, and I just really the people who don't believe it, they're in the 5.8%. Now,
because you're saying climate change, and that is different.
No, I'm sorry. I'm not going to do this. I'm seriously not going to do it. I'm not going to have a debate with you about climate. Not going to do it. So if you want to talk about it, you're welcome to do so, but I'm not going to join in that debate. The reason I'm not going to do that is I've got other things I want to do today.
Anyway, that's my big question.
Sure, it's a good question, but we can talk about it later on. But I want to talk about something else. But what we've got is 5.8% of Australians who don't think humans are having an impact on the climate. They don't. That's a tiny percent. Just about 1 in 20 don't think that's the case. Whereas 78% of Australians believe what the overwhelming majority, it's about 95% of the scientific evidence, and scientists are telling, reviewed papers are telling us, is that our 3.5 billion tonnes of carbon dioxide each year that we're putting in the atmosphere is having a significant and damaging effect on the environment, on the climate. But only 1% of us are really active in the business of doing something about it. And so really the objective has to be to get people who think it's a serious or very serious concern to do something about it. And that's the key objective of our campaign. And it's a good time to do it because at election time, when politicians are much more sensitive, it's a great time to get them to start thinking about this issue. And as I say, there is you weren't here when I said it, but there is a considerable amount of mixed messaging going on from the Baird-Stoner government. They really don't know where they're at, so we can sort them out on that. I hope this works. Oh, no, other way. Sorry, this thing's... There we go. So there are three key things three key messages we're trying to get out there. The first one is that the transition to 100% renewables is possible. The second one is it's affordable. The third is it's essential. So let me just do the possible first of all. And as I said before, this is not something I could have said to you 3 years ago or 4 years ago. I could have said with you 100% confidence that we can shut down all our coal-fired power stations, all our gas-fired power stations, and the lights would stay on. I can say that now after 3 separate studies, one from the University of New South Wales, the work of Mark Diesendorf, where they took the last 2 years, hour by hour data of electricity usage, solar radiation, wind, and they looked at existing off-the-shelf technologies. If we they've got very good geographic data about wind. So looked at wind in South Australia, Victoria, New South Wales, Queensland and Tasmania, and they looked at the constraints that the transmission system might develop. They looked at rooftop solar, concentrated solar thermal power stations, those big central power stations that heat water and create steam and electricity. They looked at energy efficiency improvements and demand management, managing the demand strategically. They reran the system for 2 years, and the lights stayed on. At no point did we run out of electricity. But that's the university. And there's a similar study from the University of Melbourne. Their universities, which by the way came to the same conclusion, their universities, same conclusion, same outcome. But of course we know universities are full of greedy Bolsheviks, and they will say things like that. Martin Ferguson, who was the minister against the... Can you hold your questions to the end?
No, because what I meant to know, so does that also include electricity needed for industry?
Yes, it's all electricity.
So it's not just the lights.
You continue to run a modern economy with manufacturing, in fact probably with more manufacturing, with commerce, agriculture, minerals processing, and as well domestic needs and commercial needs. So they just took the existing demand. They didn't look at it. Now that demand is getting easier to satisfy because some of the things we do here which are energy intensive are going anyway. Nothing to do with renewable energy, everything to do with global commodity prices, the high value of the Australian dollar, and simply the cost of delivering coal-fired electricity. And I'm fairly confident we will sooner or later lose. We've already lost one aluminium smelter. We're likely to lose another aluminium smelter. But as I said, they're universities. They will say things like that. Martin Ferguson, who was the Minister for Fossil Fuels in the previous government, he commissioned the Australian Energy Market Operator to do a study to answer the question, can we go 100% renewable? The Australian Energy Market Operator it's a company that's owned by all the state governments and the federal government. And what it does is it is full of engineers whose responsibility is to keep the lights on minute to minute, hour to hour, day to day, week to week, month to month, year to year. So they have total responsibility for running the national electricity market. So they look at who's connected, what's connected, how it's working, and their sole objective is to keep the lights on, keep industry operating, no interruptions to supply is what they work towards. Ferguson was convinced that these guys would come back and say, no, can't do it, that's ridiculous. And in order to make it really tricky, he said, not do it now, but project the load forward to 2025 and see what it would look like then. Now, the reason why that makes it tricky is that load growth projection is always done on the idea, well, it's going to grow at 3% a year. So the 2025 load is really big. The reality is we'll never get to that level of projected load. In fact, if you go backwards and you look at the load that was being projected for New South Wales in 2007, it's about 10% greater than the actual load that happens. They always over-predicted. But anyway, they did it and they came back and said, oh, yes, we can do it. They actually came up with a report that said, yes, we can do it, it's possible. At that point, of course, the report disappeared from the website as soon as Ferguson discovered what it said. Enough of us had copies of it that have re-emerged, and it's now back on the website. And it makes an interesting read because it's clearly written by people whose brief it was to say no, you can't do it, but you can do it. So it's possible. So once you say to people it's possible to do this, they'll then say, well, it's incredibly expensive. They'll say it just costs too much money to do it. Oh, goodness gracious. Hang on. Sorry, there we go. They'll say, look, it's really expensive. It's going to cost an absolute fortune to do this. Everybody knows renewable energy is really expensive. Well, actually, not everybody knows that because it's actually not true. If you were to build, leaving aside replacing existing power stations, if you were to build, if our demand for electricity through industry and households was to grow suddenly, and you would ask the question, what's the cheapest way to supply that? It is not coal or gas. The cheapest way to supply that is wind. Wind is now the cheapest next increment of energy. There have been a couple of studies that have said wind is cheaper. But that's not actually answering the question I want to answer, which is what about getting rid of our existing coal-fired suite and gas and replacing it with renewable energy? Well, suppose your roof has a hole in it, and you get a roofing constructor out to fix it, and they say, "Oh, look, I'm sorry, Mr. Kaye, that's going to cost you $10,000 to repair." You don't then go, "Oh, that's far too much," and walk away from it. You ask the question, "Well, if I don't repair it, what will happen? How much will it cost?" And I look at the damage of water getting into my house, and I think, well, that's going to wreck all my furniture and eventually will destroy the house. It's going to cost a lot more to repair it than to not repair it. So the question we want to ask, the big question we want to ask is, if we don't make the change, if we don't make a change to renewable, what's our ongoing costs of burning coal? And there are things called externalities, which are not currently costs, and they're things which go out, other people pay for it. And one of those externalities is health. There's about $800 million a year of direct health costs associated with New South Wales' 6 coal-fired power stations. They don't just pump out carbon dioxide, they also pump out lots of other nasties. Polyaromatic hydrocarbons, which are partially combusted hydrocarbons, really nasty carcinogens. Heavy metals like lead and zinc and polonium, all of which are cumulative and carcinogenic, and carbon monoxide, which isn't real good for you. All these compounds have real and measurable health costs, and the health costs are about $800 million a year in New South Wales alone. That's hospitalisation costs, medical treatment costs, and costs associated with people not being at work, and costs associated with deaths. That's one part of it. The next part of it, which is much harder to quantify, is fossil fuel subsidies. And there have been a number of studies, and they all come out with different answers. Somewhere between $2 and $4 billion a year goes to the fossil fuel industry in direct and indirect government subsidies. Some of those subsidies are to do with the way we rebate the fuel tax on oil when it goes to off-road uses. So mines, which use an awful lot of diesel fuel, get their diesel fuel much cheaper than a trucking company does. That's a kind of subsidy. And that subsidy is thought to be worth a couple of $1 billion a year to the coal industry, or that part of the coal industry which directly provides coal to the electricity industry in New South Wales. And there are other subsidies in terms of cheaper coal. They get our coal-fired power stations in New South Wales get coal at below market prices, somewhere between $2 and $4 billion. But they all pale into insignificance. That say $2.8 billion worth of costs of doing nothing pale into insignificance compared to the cost of the carbon that we put out from our coal-fired power stations. 60 million tonnes a year. Each one of those tonnes has been estimated does some amount of damage. You put another tonne of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, global warming gets just that little bit worse, and that has impacts, real impacts on people's health, on the spread of diseases, on damage to infrastructure, droughts, on bushfires, on cyclones, on storms, on sea level rise. And when you put it all together, it's about, well, there are a variety of estimates, but one, the sort of central estimate, when you average it up between the ridiculously low and the frighteningly high, it's about $200 a tonne. Times 60 million tonnes a year is $12 billion a year of damage being done by our coal-fired power stations. Hugely expensive. The cost of transition, which for some reason is not up on that slide, the cost of transition is somewhere around $10 billion a year. If we made the transition, if we started building solar thermal power stations, wind turbines, rooftop solar, and we changed our transmission distribution poles and wires to match that, it will be somewhere around $10 or $11 billion a year. I'm basing that on a study done by Beyond Zero Emissions. My best guess is it's actually cheaper than that. The more you do, the cheaper it gets, right? So the first T-model Ford that Henry Ford made cost a lot of money, but the 100,000th T-model Ford was very cheap because you get better at making these things and you get economies of scale. So my guess is that by the time we started building these things, the total cost would be a lot less. It's over a 15-year period. $10 billion a year sounds like a lot of money, but it's about the same amount. It's much less than the $16 or $17 billion that the coal-fired electricity industry costs us at the moment. And it's not a lot of money when you look at other things we've spent $10 billion on. So what does the state of New South Wales, what do we, the citizens of New South Wales, spend $10 billion on? Well, let me think. One thing, for example, is defence. This nation, Australia, spends $30 billion a year on defence. So about $10 billion a year from taxpayers in New South Wales on defence. You know, buying things like the Joint Strike Force fighter, the $2 billion a piece, buying things like the Abrams tank, all these things that we're buying, which are very expensive. I would argue that becoming world leaders in making the transition to clean energy is actually will make us more secure as a nation than spending that amount of money on defence. But there are other things as well. So $10 billion a year is a lot of money, but it's not an impossible amount of money. But there's another thing that happens, which is that when you start making that transition, you change the economy. This is a significant reworking of our economy. And the change to our economy means that we start creating a lot of new jobs in New South Wales. The University of Newcastle study suggested something like 73,800 new jobs over the period of the transition, and many ongoing jobs after that. It's a whole new economy. Certainly we would lose jobs in the coal-fired electricity industry, but my analysis is that there's about 1,800 jobs in the coal-fired generators, and there's about 3,000, 4,000 in the about 3,000 or 4,000 in the coal mines that provide the coal to the coal-fired power stations. So about 5,000 jobs lost, about 73,000 jobs gained. It's a jobs boom. Not only that, but we can put those jobs in areas of high unemployment. And as soon as you start putting jobs in areas of high unemployment, other costs begin to decline. The welfare costs go down, crime costs go down, health costs go down, all the costs associated with unemployment begin to decrease. By the way, we should get rid of unemployment for reasons other than just cost. But if we're talking money, what creating a new economy brings in, and all these people will be paying tax. All these people pay tax. They all buy stuff from people who pay tax. So there is a whole new economy to be had there. Not only that, but this economy is the economy that the rest of the world will want. I don't know if you've looked at coal prices recently. They've declined dramatically. 2 years ago, coal prices were up around $170 a tonne, now down around $85 a tonne. Coal is a commodity. The rest of the world is getting less and less interested in coal, and we are making less and less money on coal. How the government keeps its revenue base up is that we're exporting more and more coal at lower and lower prices. So we're building new coal loaders, hopefully we don't, but there's a plan to build a new coal loader to export coal at Newcastle. There are a whole lot of new coal mines that are working their way through the planning system. And in order to keep the revenue stream on the royalties up, we have to sell more and more coal at a lower and lower value. The other, just to give you a sense of the size of the renewable energy economy, at the beginning of this year, there were some 17 large-scale wind projects on the books for New South Wales. They're all stalled. I think only one has gone ahead in the time of the Baird-O'Farrell government. The rest of this sat stalled because of the hostile planning environment. But if they all went ahead, they would create 4,000 new jobs. They would bring about $11 billion of investment capital into New South Wales. And they would slash about 17 million tonnes of carbon dioxide off the 60 million tonnes we put out each year. And they would not push up electricity bills if they went ahead. In fact, on the contrary, in the long term, they actually begin to bring down the cost of generating electricity. So it is totally affordable. This is not about pushing up power bills. In fact, you know, the people always say, well, renewable energy, it's going to push up power bills dramatically. That's what people say. But one of the studies that came out this week suggested that, in fact, if you got rid of the RET, the renewable energy target, electricity prices would go up dramatically. And in fact, I can't remember the figure, but it was some $2 or $3 billion of profit would be transferred from consumers to coal-fired generators if you got rid of the RET. Renewable energy is now a way of keeping electricity prices down.
Would there be some short-term price rises? Like medium to long term, obviously, we can see that the price will go down. But in the short term, there will be some price rises?
I think it depends on how it's done.
Yeah, depends on the legislation.
One of the really, and I have to qualify this carefully, because one of the bad things that will happen next, and that whether anything I say today happens or not, this is likely to happen. The Baird government is likely to sell the wires and poles to private enterprise, which is, for reasons that become clear in a minute, a total catastrophe. What will happen is that I'm fairly convinced that cost-effective electricity storage is just around the corner. And people will look at their electricity bills and go, well, what's the point of staying connected to the grid? If I've got north-facing roof, I might as well put solar panels on my roof, disconnect from the grid, and just get some batteries and just manage my electricity demand carefully and save a whole lot of money. Now, every person who does that who's a person, suppose the grid is sold for, let's suppose it's sold for $15 billion. The new owners of the grid will want to recover that $15 billion, and they do it by getting a component of your electricity bill. But if you leave the grid, then you're one less person paying that bill. So everybody else has to pay a little bit more. And as their bills begin to go up, more and more people will go, well, heck, it's not worth it. I'm going to disconnect, put solar panels on my roof. And as everybody who has a north-facing roof and a bit of capital to spend will get out of the business of being connected to the grid. Prices will then go up dramatically, whether we connect renewables or not. And the people who will be caught will be the low-income people who don't have access to capital and who don't have north-facing roofs. So renters, people living in apartment blocks, and people who don't have the money to buy this stuff will get caught with ever-rising electricity bills. What we argue is we should hold the grid in public hands and reconfigure it so as that we put renewable energy, so as we make the transition to renewable energy. Some people will leave the grid, that's unavoidable. Others we can convince to stay on by saying, well, connect your renewable energy to our grid, we'll pay you for that. We'll act as your batteries, your storage. I think in the long run, our vision for the future of the electricity industry is more likely to keep prices under control than the privatised model of Baird and O'Farrell. 50% of what you pay in your electricity bills are for the wires and poles, and about 50% of the price rise that you've seen over the last 4 years has been for wires and poles. So they are a big contributor. Putting those in the private hand, they're going to get worse. They're going to get worse as we go along. As our demand reduces, then the real cost driver will be those fixed costs, those costs already committed in the wires and poles. So it's affordable. We also argue, let me try this one. No, that was the wrong button entirely. Try that button. There we go. We also argue it's essential that we make the transition. It's essential for a whole series of reasons. The first one is the future of our economy. The worst thing that can happen to Australia and to New South Wales is that we stick with what we've got. We keep going down the route of coal and gas. And that's fine. You know, we'll have to dig up more and more and wreck more of the Hunter Valley, more of the Liverpool Plains, and we'll undermine our food production capacity, which, by the way, you know, a greenhouse affected world is a totally awesome and stupid thing to do. Food is going to become incredibly valuable, and maintaining your food production capacity as a nation is critical, not just to feed ourselves, but in terms of our economy. We could do all that, and it might look okay for a while, but sooner or later the rest of the world is going to say, no, we're not interested in your coal, we're not interested in your gas, we're going to go renewable. At which point Australia is left with three major problems. The first problem I've got is that the stuff we've been exporting is now no longer has any value. And so our whole dependence on coal and gas and fossil fuels suddenly is a dead end. Second problem we've got is that the rest of the world will at the same time turn around to us and say, well, Australia, you need to get, not only do we not want your stuff anymore, but you can't keep burning coal and gas. You have to get out of it, otherwise we'll apply trade sanctions to you and make life miserable to you, because the world can't afford anybody on this planet polluting at the rate you are. At that point we've hit an economic dead end, complete economic dead end. But worse, it will be at a time when, likely, the climate is turning even more hostile against us. So we're at a point where we reach an economic, employment and environmental dead end. It's not a pretty picture. And it becomes an essential duty we have to the next generation, baby boomers, and all of us have to the next generation, to secure for them an economy that works. The other economy, the clean energy economy, if you get ahead of the curve, if Australia gets ahead of the curve, you know, we had some of the world's best solar panel designs. They've all disappeared out of Australia now. And in fact, the last vestige of that investment in Australia is about to leave, which is a real tragedy. We had some of the world's best solar thermal designs, but they're all being built in America and Israel. We had some really clever designs around rooftop solar mounting, but they're all the things that we're doing are disappearing. But if we do the other thing, they're disappearing because there just isn't the market for it here in Australia. But if we push up the domestic market in Australia for renewable energy, we will see those industries come back. And if we do it faster than the rest of the world, we will generate the jobs here, we'll become the experts, we'll become the go-to people when you want to make the transition. So when some of the nations that are slow are forced into the transition, we'll be the people they turn to, and that will generate the export industries that will keep this nation prosperous through the middle part of the 21st century. Coal and gas will not do that. And when I say the middle part of the 21st century, that's 10 years away. We begin to get to the middle part in 10 years' time. Coal and gas are going to be much less valuable than they are now, and we will be wondering, what are we going to do next? And this is the answer. The other reason for doing it, the other reason for making the transition is a moral one. It's just not moral. There's no reason why Australians, just because we live on this particular planet, this particular continent, had the right to be the world's largest greenhouse gas emitters in the world. There's just no moral reason per capita. Because I live here, I'm allowed to emit 25 tonnes per annum, whereas somebody who lives in West Africa is only emitting of the order of about 8 tonnes a year. Somebody who lives in Japan is about 11 tonnes a year. European average is about 10 tonnes a year. Why are we so much higher? Well, we used to have that. It's a moral imperative for us to get down below the rest of the world. So we argue it's possible, it's affordable, it's essential. The question then is, why hasn't it happened? Well, the technology is available. It's certainly the economics are affordable. There's a will to action. But we have two sets of problems. The first is political, and the second relates to psychology. So let's do the politics first. This is out of date. That should be Mike Baird. I need to Photoshop Mike Baird's head onto Barry O'Farrell. In fact, maybe we just leave a blank there because you never know what's going to happen next. The first major problem we have is the political barriers. The fossil fuel industry is incredibly powerful. You know, I used to say there are three levels of government in Australia. There are the real estate developers, the banks, and the fossil fuel industry. And they really do have amazing control, partly by the fact that they're far better lobbyists than we are, and partly by the fact that they're quite good campaign donors. Not as good as the real estate development industry was, but still $1 million to the three large old political parties over the last 8 years. There's no mean sum. But the other key thing they've done is that if you've been working in politics for a while and you've shown any kind of sympathy towards the fossil fuel industry, you're likely to be able to leave politics and get a quite nice job with the fossil fuel industry. John Anderson, who was Deputy Prime Minister under John Howard, became the chair of the board of Eastern Star Gas, which was a big gas company in the northwest of the state. Stephen Galilee was, when Mike Baird was Treasurer, Stephen Galilee was his Chief of Staff. Stephen Galilee is now the Chief Executive Officer of the Minerals Council of New South Wales. Martin Ferguson ceased being the Minister for Fossil Fuels in the Rudd-Gillard government, and then turned up as the chair of the board of the APPO, Australian Petroleum Producers and Exploration Association, the main lobby group for coal seam gas. Some people said that actually nothing changed for Martin. He was doing the same job, just different employers. The other issue is, of course, power bills. One of the political problems we've had is that at the time the carbon price came on, power bills skyrocketed. People go, oh, well, it's a carbon price. It's dry. In fact, I remember not that long ago, being in a shouting match with the man who now leads the government in the New South Wales Upper House, at least last time I was in there he did, you never know, John Kaye, where he was swearing black and blue that power bills were being driven up by the carbon price. And it was all those power bill rises were because of the carbon price. Well, this isn't true. It's a slightly complex graph, but this comes from the Independent Pricing and Regulatory Tribunal, who set the prices. This is your bill in 2008, and this little bit of your bill here in 2007-8, that black or dark blue bit down the bottom was the energy costs. The red bit in there was the other green scheme costs. The blue bit there was the retail costs, and the green bit on the top, horrible colours, not my choice, that's the network cost. So about half your costs for the network. Between 2002, 2007-8 and 2013-14, all of those components increased. Energy increased by 55. Carbon was $172 additional because there's no carbon before. The other green schemes, the way you remember, they said the solar bonus scheme was going to bankrupt us entirely. $87 increase a year. But the real kicker, $580 increase. So the $1,000 increase, $1,000 and whatever increase, more than half of it was from the wires and poles. Why did that happen? Because when Frank Sartor, and you might remember him, Rockdale, your local member, Frank Sartor, against all advice from people who knew what was going on, allowed the four state-owned wires and poles companies to go out and spend about $17 billion on new infrastructure, which we're still paying for and will pay for all the way through for about another 3 or 4 years. And that's what that is. That's massive new infrastructure that was designed to bring electricity from coal-fired power stations to houses and industry. Wrong infrastructure for the 21st century, expensive infrastructure, and much of it is what's called stranded asset. Completely unnecessary. We'll never recover the investment. But despite that fact, despite that being a known fact, despite the really punitive part of your electricity bill being the wires and poles, and the real growth in electricity costs being the wires and poles increase, despite all of that, the O'Farrell and Baird governments and the Abbott government insists that this tiny little component in here was the thing we should be worried about. They were missing the point. It was actually not only that, but about $172 a year for the average household was actually more than compensated. We actually got, in terms of increases, tax cuts, increases in family benefits, and pension increases, that was actually more than compensated. So when you put it all together, it was a huge and complete myth, but it was a myth that made people very nervous about action on climate change. The other issue is psychological barriers, and one of the problems, and we're partly responsible for this, or people like me are partly responsible for it, because throughout the 2000s, we were really worried that people weren't getting the climate change message. People like Al Gore were out there trying to scare people witless to get them to pay attention. And they got them to pay attention, but I think to some extent what has happened is that many people, there's a whole lot of psychological literature that says that if you keep telling people, and we saw it with cigarettes, you keep telling people you're going to die, you're going to die, you're going to die, people will sooner or later go, oh, whatever, I'm going to die, I'm just going to smoke. And it's the same, smoking and burning coal are very similar things. We have warnings, increasingly dire warnings about what burning coal will do, but we still do it. And why do we still do it? Well, partly because of desensitisation. People have just heard the message so much, they don't get it. And what I found really interesting was, in 2007, it was much easier to have a climate change conversation than it was in the 2011 election. And the reason was, in 2007, we were in the grip of a horrendous drought. Things were dying, there were bushfires, everybody was really scared. They saw the climate as something that was coming to get us. We then went into a La Nina event, and we had a lot more rainfall and a much more mild climate. Even though we had some really hot days, some record-breaking days, on the east coast of Australia, particularly around Sydney, it's actually been quite mild summer. But, batten down the hatches, Sydney, we've got some stuff coming. Maybe not this summer, but certainly the summer after. If the El Nino develops, it'll be quite serious. One of the things that psychologists keep telling you is, if you tell somebody, smoking cigarettes is going to kill you, they'll just go, oh, that's terrible, and they'll keep smoking. If you say, smoking cigarettes is going to kill you, but you can give up, and not only that, but 85% of people, I made that figure up, 85% of people who have seriously embarked on giving up have actually given up. And here's a way you can do it. And we've got this program for you. Then people go, oh, okay, I'll do it. You can't just give people the bad news. You've got to give them the bad news and the good news. You've got to give them the way out. You've got to give them the solution. And that's one of the reasons why we focus so much on the campaign of solutions and not so much on the campaign of fear. The other problem we've got is the depoliticisation of society. And you go back and look at what Margaret Thatcher did. I love Margaret Thatcher, not in the way you think. I love Margaret Thatcher because her quotes are so honest and so brutal. Margaret Thatcher said, economics are the method. The object is to change the heart and soul. What's surprising is economics, most people say economic reform is about making everybody better off. Not for Margaret Thatcher. For Margaret Thatcher, economic reform was about changing the way people think about themselves and their society. It was about depoliticising people. It was about making people not citizens but shareholders. About making people not members of communities but individual economic agents. It was about cutting people off from their society, and it worked. The economic rationalist neoliberal reform agenda of the last 2 decades has made people less secure financially as they move from secure permanent work to more casualised work. They're less secure financially. They are more committed on debt. Household debt has gone up on average. They are less engaged with local organisations. The political parties are smaller now than they've ever been before. They've really shrunk because civic organisations are shrinking. It is much harder to get volunteers to do things. And that is largely because of economic reform. People have busy lives. Lives are busier now than they used to be. But part of that busyness was somewhat deliberately created by people like Margaret Thatcher to take people away from being political activists and to turn them into good consumers. So those are the barriers. The question is, what should we do? What does the psychological literature tells us we should do? They tell us a couple of things. They tell us don't catastrophise. You need to be honest with people about how bad inaction will be, but you can't just do that. You can't just have this run of, and I've seen people do this with the best of wills, and they'll talk to people about global warming and say, it's terribly shocking, all these things are going to happen. And the poor person who's receiving the message is going, it's just so shocking. And then they will just shut down. The reason why we do that, by the way, is evolutionary. If we had genuinely looked at every real threat that faced us, think about us in the cave. We thought, if I step outside that cave, I will hit that saber-toothed tiger is going to kill me. Which was a logical thing, because it probably would. So you would never leave the cave. So we have developed mechanisms for blocking out threats that we can't control. And if we feel we can't control a danger or a threat, we have a tendency to block it out. It's an almost rational response. What we've got to convince people is that, yes, it's a bad threat, but there is a way of controlling it. What the psychology literature tells us is it's always better to tell somebody something. Somebody will remember what you've told them if it's positive more than if it's negative. I'll tell you what, if I tell you that giving up smoking, if I told you giving up smoking is going to increase your life expectancy by 25 years, it's probably true. If it's going to increase your life expectancy by 20 years, if you're a heavy smoker, you're a young heavy smoker, it's going to increase your life expectancy by 20 years, you'll listen to me. If I say to you, if you don't give up smoking, you're going to die 20 years earlier, you're not going to hear the same message. Even though they're identical information, putting it in the positive gets people more engaged than putting it in the negative. They just hear the message because there's something they can do with it. So for us, what that means is, what that means for us is we need to be talking about jobs. We need to be talking about the renewal of the economy. We need to be talking about investment in renewable energy. We need to talk about positive things that will come. The only way to control household power bills in the long run is with renewable energy. The positives, selling them the positives is a great thing to do. The other thing that the psychology literature tells us is getting people engaged in campaigning and giving them positive experiences is likely to make them want to do more. I mean, that's not all that difficult to understand, is it? If people do something, if you give somebody, so what I'm saying is, if you give somebody a leaflet, that's an experience which is neither positive or negative. But if you give somebody a leaflet, you say, look, would you like to get some signatures on this piece of paper, on this petition? And they get the signatures on the piece, and they bring it back to you and say, that's terrific. And you give them positive feedback, and you say, look, meet all these other people who've done the same thing. So you get a positive collective feeling out of it, they're more likely to do more. And the only other thing I want to say is, two things I want to say about messaging. The first thing is that if I go to your next door neighbour, I knock on their door and I say, there are 73,800 new jobs in renewable energy, we really ought to make the transition. They're going to go, very nice, thank you very much, and forget me. But if you go to your next door neighbour and say, hey, have you heard all this stuff about the incredible jobs growth that renewable energy will bring? Have you heard? It's just terrific stuff. Oh, by the way, how are the kids? That is a far more potent communication. Peer-to-peer communication is more potent than elite-to-peer communication. It's more potent. It has more impact on what people think. It has more impact on how they will act. The second aspect of that is that if you knock on somebody's door and they say to you, I don't like the Greens because you're all about renewable energy and it's going to cost jobs. The worst thing you could then do is say, no, but we really need renewable energy because renewable energy is about saving the planet. You've got to be in their frame. Their frame is jobs. So you say, yeah, but renewable energy will generate lots of new jobs. You know, jobs are important. You get into their framework. It's communicating trying to communicate from your framework to somebody else is much more difficult than communicating from their framework to them. So, and this stuff works, by the way. The United States has a moderately progressive president who is not white, and I wouldn't have believed that was possible. And people think, that Obama for America campaign really worked. It wasn't Obama for America that got him elected. That was the big advertising campaign you saw. The campaign that got him elected was the street campaign called Organising for America, where you had individuals on the streets, neighbourhood advocates who would have little barbecues or morning coffees or whatever, invite people around and say, look, I really want to just share, I just got this stuff from the Obama campaign, I really want to talk to you about healthcare. I want to talk to you about what it will mean for us here in Toledo, Ohio, on the south side, what it will mean for us. Localising the message and having the message coming from peers, from people in the cohort, really worked for Obama. So, what we're going to do, how we're enacting that, is that we're encouraging people to go to my website, which is johnkaye.org.au, and then go to the 100% renewables. And when you get there, there's a drop-down menu. It's a bit hard to see. There's a drop-down menu that tells you what your postcode is, which it's got every postcode in New South Wales. When you go to your postcode, you can see I haven't updated my slides. The Rockdale and Oatley slides are at home, so I hope that I've got here. Here we go. Rockdale. What you get is you get one of that's for people who are in Rockdale, and this is for people who are in Oatley. You can print these off on the website. Does everybody use some colour? The point being, it's a really simple activist task, because we think it's a worthwhile activist task, is to encourage people to get signatures on this letter. It's a simple sign-on letter to go to the local Member of Parliament, and you can download them from the website. The idea is we're encouraging people to get together in groups of people, better do it in groups than individually, and set a target for how many signatures they can get. Set a target for how many signatures they can get. If you haven't got one of those letters, there are plenty on the front, or you can go to down here at the front. Set a target for how many signatures, and we're encouraging people to be conservative in that target, say 500 or, depending on what the area is. Well, 500 is not a lot of signatures. 200, whatever you think you can get. And then divide up areas and get people to go out and collect their signatures. And then come back together again and get all those signatures together and say, look at what we've got. We've got, and it's remarkable, if each person gets 20 signatures, and there are 10 of you, suddenly got 200 signatures to go to Cherie Burton, or to Mark Curry, or to John Flowers. It's remarkable how quickly you aggregate those up. And then we encourage you to go and see John Flowers, and we'll give you a media release to do it with, or Mark Curry, or Cherie Burton, and present those letters to them. and say, look, here's 300 concerned citizens who are very concerned about renewable energy. We've had some success doing this. We've had little groups forming around it. In Lismore and Drummoyne, as it turns out, have been two areas where we've had some success with it. But also, we hope we can have success down here. And I just want to finish by saying, this is stuff about how to do it. I think you know how to do that. I want to finish by saying, look, this is the battle for not just for the planet, but also for the economy. It's more than that, though. It's the essence of who we are. You know, we really have two choices now. We can, as a people, just do the easy stuff. We can just say, okay, we're just going to keep doing coal. We'll destroy our TAFE system. We'll privatise our TAFE system. We'll get rid of our manufacturing industries. We'll just dig ever greater holes out in the ground. It'll all be fine, and then one day it won't. But the problem is, if we do that, we're not challenging ourselves. We're just sitting still. We're coasting along. We're bringing in multinational mining companies to do our mining for us. We're not getting anything back, really, intellectually. If we do the other thing, if we do the thing that's harder, if we do the thing that requires us, as a people, to think collectively about our future, if we reinvigorate our TAFE system, if we reinvigorate our universities, if we take our collective intelligence and we put it to work on transforming our energy industry, on building a new export base for Australia, on building a new economy for New South Wales, if we do all that, we have achieved something. We have something that we can be genuinely proud of. You know, the Snowy scheme was a defining moment for Australia. Well, that's now, the Snowy scheme was completed 60 years ago. We can't ride on that glory. We need now, and people talk about nation building, and then they talk about building highways or coal mines. Real nation building is building our people. It's building our capacity. It's building our intellectual capacity. It's building our moral capacity. It's building our pride in ourselves. And 100% renewables is all about that. Thank you so much for listening.